Okay, meeting of the Community Advisory Committee, Area Council of Governments. We'll call this to order. It's 3 o'clock, I believe, Jared. And we do have a quorum, correct?
Yes, we do, and then some.
Okay, great.
Good.
Okay, well, we've got a lot to cover today, so we'll push this through. And first thing we'll cover is agenda approval. If anybody would like to make a motion on that.
I'll move. This is Miley Foster to accept the agenda.
Welling Clark, El Paso County, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions, debate? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, agenda's accepted. Consent items. We need to approve the minutes from last time. I'm guessing you've all had an opportunity to read those. And if so, we'll take a motion to accept.
I move we accept them.
Okay, have a second.
I'll second. Kathy Heisey for a second.
Okay, we've had a motion and a second. Any comments, debate on the minutes?
Can we make sure that everybody who makes a motion just also states their name for the public
Certainly.
record?
Certainly.
And also who you represent too.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Did you get that this time, Jared?
I got Bill Bowles from Park County with the motion, and then Kathy Heisey from Calhan. I was trying to think of which city out there. What's the second?
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Welling Clark, El Paso County, I have to abstain. I was not present.
Okay. One abstention and passes otherwise unanimously. Okay, public comments, and that would be for the public. Do we have anybody online, Jared, or I don't see anybody in the audience?
So I'll go ahead and ask anyone who's online who would like to make a public comment for an item that's not on the agenda to use the raise hand function at this time. While we wait for that, we did not receive any advance requests for public comment. If there's anyone in the room who would like to make a public comment who is not a member of the CAC, you can come up to the podium at this time. As I have said all that, I do not see any hands raised online, so I think we can proceed.
Okay, good. I'm glad we're moving along here. Action items, item A, Bradley lift station, I believe this one is. And is that covered by you, Jared, today?
That is, we also have Ann Werner who's online. She's our senior military and environmental planner.
Does she have a presentation?
So she does not. So we do have the engineers from each of these lift stations who are online. Anne might be able to better coordinate since she'll know exactly who is tied to which application. So Anne, I'm going to punt it a little over to you if you might be able to handle this and introduce the project.
Hi, Jared. I'm racking my brain. I'm trying to remember the name of the engineer that presented to us this morning. I think it was Tyler Johnson.
Tyler Robinson, very close.
Yep. So the engineer needs to present the project like they did to the Water Quality Committee this morning. I'll let them take over.
And as he takes over, do we want to do questions after he presents, or?
I would say let's plan to do questions afterwards because he might be able to answer any questions during his presentation.
Okay.
I will go ahead and just meet. So as the memo says, this was reviewed and it was actually recommended by the Water Quality Management Committee during its meeting this morning.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
but I'll go ahead and turn it over to Tyler.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to share my screen. Can you all see that?
We can, Tyler. Thank you.
Let's get started here. Okay. Well, I'll keep it real brief for you this morning. I'll try my best here. The Bradley Lift Station is a lift station that's going to be constructed near the airport at the what's called the Peak Innovation Park near Colorado Springs Airport. There's several lift stations, and it's just over time the development there has just slowly grown more and more and taking up pretty much all the land there available for Colorado Springs. And the topography in that area is very elusive to need lift stations throughout that area. So Bradley Lift Station is sort of on the far edge of that site there. Let's go into a little bit where it's at. So here's the airport. Bradley is kind of in the lower right corner. Like I mentioned, it's part of the Peak Innovation Park, and this would be for new development that's anticipated for that area that would eventually flow to the wastewater treatment plant, the Las Vegas wastewater treatment plant. Here's an overview of all of the existing, or just all of the drainage basins for the airport for this Peak Innovation Park. Each of these represent a service area serviced by gravity and by a lift station currently. The orange goes to an existing lift station known as Drennan Lift Station. The green is existing, and that flows down to Airport Business Park Lift Station. But it's also known as Grinnell Lift Station. So there's kind of two different names for that one. The blue drainage area is the Peak Lift Station, and that one is being constructed right now. That one's underway. That one's one of the smallest ones. And then the purple area is the Bradley Lift Station service area, and that's what our lift station is going to, where all the flows are going to feed into that lift station there. And we'll show the schematic, everything later, but the final discharge point that this entire park flows to is a interceptor in the northwest. There's the red line way at the end, just underneath area. There's a manhole there that goes to an interceptor that flows down to the Las Vegas plant. So the history of this site is everything just flows up and down hills to get to that point. Just as an overview. Let's talk about what's happening in the specific Bradley area, that purple area there. The anticipated development that would occur in the zones that are going here are mostly just commercial and light industrial, although there is a slot just to the south. It's just off the property that will be serviced by Bradley. Bradley sits in sort of the lowest point in this area here. It's in the low corner. So the water view development that's on the very south part of this screen here that's hard to see, that is a residential that will flow into Bradley. But most of the other flows will be industrial and light commercial and light industrial. There's can't tell from this, but there's a very large hill from Bradley to get up over to the west there to get to the other side. So we're bumping over 100 feet elevation there. And total flow for this one is 1.41 would be the full build out. And talking with CDPHE and CSU on how things will phase in over time, it made the most sense to construct Bradley to the full 1.41 MGD and just see how phasing occurs and development actually occurs to and during the actual design of this process, we're going to look at how we can phase the flows coming in, whether that's through VFDs or multiple force mains to get the flows to come in there. Skip, there we go. The way that the system is set up, it's a little in series here, and mostly just because the topography there is just very hilly. It's unavoidable really with all the lift stations. The idea is the Peak and Bradley lift station, they will flow into a manhole, which will go by gravity into the Grinnell lift station, also known as Airport Business Park lift station. Then that will flow from there all the way up to the gravity sewer interceptor that goes to Las Vegas, and Drennan also will feed into that same force main that goes to that gravity line. So Drennan and Grinnell have been existing for a while, and Peak is brand new under construction now, and then Bradley is our lift station that's going to be constructed. This is probably the more complex part of all this. The rest of it's just a standard lift station development thing here. So after this, I just have some general, very high site level layouts of kind of where it's going. And we haven't started design, obviously, but we can go in the site app more. But if you guys are going to have questions, I think it's going to be here. I will say from the meeting this morning, we were asked to bring a representative from Colorado Springs, and we had Justin Fecto on the call. And he went through everyone's concerns of the multiple lift stations going through a common force main and development and aging infrastructure. And the consensus was that CSU understands that system infrastructure is hard, but also predicting the future is hard. So even though at full capacity, whatever, if Bradley and Peak lift station actually fully develop, that Grinnell lift station would be exceeded as far as flows. But Grinnell is currently only receiving 20,000 gallons per day when it's rated for 1 million gallons per day right now for its peak hour flows. So the development has occurred very slowly, and predicting where the developments will actually occur just makes sense to think of it down the line. And CSU's thoughts are we will monitor with SCADA and require that once we get to 80% or close to that future development, and a developer will need to upgrade wherever it makes sense to upgrade, whether it's at Grinnell itself, or is it another force main, or depending on how far it is, there are talks of maybe potentially a new wastewater plant to the east, or even going down to Fountain later. So maybe Bradley goes that way instead. There's just a lot of different scenarios that could happen depending on when things actually happen. So that's the approach that CSU is taking, so that we don't stop development, because development is good for everyone. But that was the conversation we had this morning. It went well, and I think Justin sent an email today documenting basically everyone's understanding today to Ann, and I think it went well this morning. But if you guys have questions, I think this is the slide to ask it on.
This is Miley representing El Paso County, Miley Foster. And I'm just a citizen here wanting to visualize what we're talking about. So I visualize a water wheel or some kind of cycle of some kind that drags the water up. Is that what we're talking about? What's the technology that you're installing there?
These would just all be submersible pumps and dry pit type pumps. So these are, you think of a big, well, they're normal size basins, but they have a large overflow for if there's a power outage, it can store at least 1 hour of peak hour flows. That so it sits in a basin and the pump sits just outside it, and that pump adds energy through a centrifugal type pump, and that sends it up the hill through a pipe to the next gravity line, or for it to flow by gravity to the next situation, whether that's another lift station or all the way to the wastewater plant.
Thank you.
Does that answer
Yeah,
the
that
question?
helps me. Yeah.
Okay.
Welling Clark, El Paso County Representative. I do have a question with the application, but I want to qualify that. I looked at the technical work, and the numbers and everything add up very well, and that you're only using basically 2% of the capacity of that interceptor that can go up to 1 million gallons a day. And so that gives plenty of time for advancement. Questions I've gone over with PPACG staff before the meeting have to do with the application, because it appears that there's some information boxes that were not filled in that raise questions. Jared, can you bring that form up, and we can just kind of go through it?
Sure, give me just a second.
Sure, page 6 or 8 or something like that. Yeah, from a technical standpoint, that looked like a very good project. Okay, and as we go through, let's see. Okay, go ahead and scroll down a little. Okay, keep scrolling. Got that. And I think that was good. No, those are filled out. That's good. Let's see. See. Go back to number, I think, was it number 9? Nope, that's good. But okay, keep going then. This, okay, I think we're down here right now. And
Was it, I think I know what you're talking about. It was the page after the signature page, right?
right. And one thing I want to tell everybody, I just found out the signature page is signed in parallel, not in series. So not all of them are supposed to be signed. So they go through all these different entities kind of simultaneously, but they have to go through that through the wheel. And so keep going through that, Jared. Yeah, looking at, okay, like at the bottom right down here where it says treatment certification, yes, treatment entity will provide treatment, or no, it won't. And I see it blank. That kind of implies to me that the form was incompletely filled out. And then certification capacity of the plant is not, or waste and everything. When I see some things like that are left blank, was it germane to the project, or was it not applicable and the NA should have been in there? And so when I see that, that kind of raises a red flag to me. Was the application just quickly put together and slapped together and put in? The technical work looks very thorough and very good. I just want to compliment everybody that did that. So the question is, going back up, that will the treatment occur there, or will it not occur?
The treatment will occur at the wastewater facility, the receiving entity. They will provide the treatment, which,
So that box should be checked, yes or no?
yes,
Okay. Normally I do not approve forms that are not completely filled out, but if this form will be checked yes before it goes to the board, I'm happy with that. And certification capacity, is that germane to this project?
the I guess my general question on that for the receiving entity for certification, I guess I thought that this would be a CSU would certify that that the capacity is with what it is based on that box above when they sign it. Does that make sense? So the signature of the treatment entity. So is the idea that we fill it out, say that we agree, and then the treatment entity, so CSU, they would sign that and say, yeah, we agree that.
Or can,
that
well,
we received
and just to help us citizens out, can you put in something like to be certified by CSU so we know it's not being missed, but due diligence is being done?
Right. Gotcha.
And so if you can put it in those boxes, it's just when you have a blank box, was something missed, or is it non-applicable, or who does it? It may not be you, the submitting entity, but can we just make sure we cross all the T's and dot the I's? And I want to give you a real quick history, 30 seconds, of where this came from. A year ago, CDOT gave us a project. The price increased by 2,200%. The scope of the project did not. We sent it back for justification, and my county commissioners, after I told them that, they said they would have kind of talked to me very interestingly, okay, as a quote, if I had approved that. So they were glad when we asked the questions for completeness. So that's kind of where this is coming from. So if we can annotate that before it goes to the board, I think that'd be very beneficial.
Gotcha. That's great to know.
Okay. Oh yeah. Well, no, we have to cover our rear ends too.
Okay.
And so if you can do that, then I would say I would be happy with this project from my standpoint, because technically it looks like a very good project and the numbers add up and the slopes and everything too. Okay, over.
Anyone else have a question? Oh, Kathy.
Kathy Heisey, Calhan. My question relates to the wastewater treatment facility at Las Vegas. It shows that the permit is administratively extended for 3 years now. And actually, you know, the same thing exists on the Teller County project that's in front of us today here in a little bit as well. And so my concern is, what is the holdup on that permit that it's administratively extended? Is it due to something that needs to be corrected at the plant that's not been addressed? Or is it a paperwork issue? Or, what would cause this to go on for 3 years? While we're looking at, recommending approval of sending more wastewater to be treated at this facility. So, if it's an issue at the facility, what happens when it's not corrected? And we've got all of this existing and new wastewater going to it.
Is there a representative from CSU on the call? I guess that would be on their end to answer that, since they have the plant.
If CSU is not on the call, I am an engineer representing the second agenda item and would be happy to attempt an answer.
Please.
Many, if not most, treatment facilities that have expired permits across the state are on administrative extension right now, as the permitting unit with PPACG is behind on issuing new permits.
Do we know why they're behind, or is there an explanation?
There are significant changes happening with discharge limitations across the state. A lot of treatment facilities are undergoing changes to comply with those limits. So that's part of the reason. One is just starting over on the permit review and how regulations are going to be applied to them. So they're just kind of working from the top of the watershed down, start at top hill, work down. So I can't speak for CSU directly. Maybe each individual treatment facility is case by case basis, but generally most treatment facilities operated by our clients are operating under administrative extension.
Thank you for that explanation.
I might add that there's a lot of growth going on in Colorado at the moment. And so in addition to maybe new permitting rules and writing permits differently than they have in the past, there's a tremendous amount of input from development. So there's a lot of work to do at the state level.
It's also my understanding that CDPHE has about 400 more employees now than they had in 2019. So it is my hope that they can put those people to good use.
Is that all you have, Kathy? Okay, okay. Anyone else with question, comment? Please. Oh, push the,
It's
So,
one where
looks
it has
like
a
some-
speaker of the mouth.
yes,
It's
Oh,
between
okay.
the microphone and.
she got
down
it.
there.
She got it.
It's not important. It's just I wanted to humor an old English teacher. That on page 3, item number 11, what entity has the financially responsibility? It is not an adverb. You can take the ly out and just make it financial responsibility. That's on page 3, number 11.
Not to be obnoxious, but let Danielle know your name.
Sheila Williams. I thought I
Okay.
did. Sorry.
Okay.
At large, Park County.
Thank you. Not sure how to push that off again. Anyone else? Go ahead.
I'm assuming there's backup power available to power these pumps, because 55 years ago, I was on a dead end in Lawrence, Kansas, and our basement flooded every time it rained hard because the system didn't keep up with it. Power would go off and the pumps would go off, and
Name and who you represent.
well, I say 55 years ago, I was flooded every time we had a heavy rain, the power went off because the sump pumps didn't pump the sewage back up over the hill in Kansas. So I'm assuming they have backup power in this system to handle that.
And your name.
Yeah, Bill Bowles from Park County.
Thanks.
Tyler, if
Yeah.
you're still online, do you have any comment on that?
Yeah. I was waiting for Bill to introduce himself. Just kidding. Yes, the intent for this one for all emergencies, there's three different, the backup power will be on site. It can completely power for the diesel generator. There will also be a backup power connection point for an external connection. And we also have the emergency overflow of 1 hour of storage, which CSU deems is feasible for if the pumps fail and generator fails, it could store water for at least 1 hour while they can mobilize to the site.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone online, Jared? I don't see anyone.
No one has raised their hand or indicated otherwise that they'd have a question, so.
Okay, we're at the point, I'll ask if there's a motion to send this forward to the board.
Welling Clark, El Paso County, since I kind of asked the obnoxious questions and everything, let me rephrase this motion. Okay, and I'm going to state it in the way from a technical standpoint, it looks very, very well done. I would entertain, I would motion to approve with the corrections annotated of where there were blanks of, and have the boxes checked of what was appropriate and what was not appropriate. And then also the statements of where CSU was going to verify certain pieces of that information. And then based off of what was brought forward by Kathy Heisey, representative of Callahan, that a statement is made about the administrative time delay and how that's on administrative or whatever, just so that we've covered all aspects of this project administratively. Would that be acceptable to the CAC? Okay, well, that is my motion. Do you have that, Daniel? I'm sorry. Okay. Over.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I second
Tanya,
I believe that was Ann Hesh. Did a second?
Green Mountain Falls. Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion presented, say aye.
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 Any opposed? And there aren't.
Opposed.
Kathy's opposed. Kathy's opposed. So we have one opposed. Got it?
I'm good.
Okay, we'll move on to item B, Teller County Waste Treatment. Is Ann covering that as well initially?
And if I could tap on you to introduce, I believe it was James Starnes, who's the engineer, but if you can do that, I will, before I hand it to Anna, I would just say that the Water Quality Management Committee met this morning on this one and approved it unanimously.
Okay.
Yeah, Jared, that's correct. This is Ann again, and it is James Starnes who will present for this item.
Hello, everyone. I am going to do my best to be heard. I am juggling a sick kid, picking up a kid from a camp, and presenting to you simultaneously. I apologize. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. Screen share. Are you able to see my screen?
We see you.
Not yet.
All right, well, let's try again.
There we go.
Beautiful. Okay. The end of it.
Oh, there it is.
That's where. Are we still good to go?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm James Starnes. I work with Respec in Colorado Springs, and I'm representing Teller County Wastewater Utility, specifically a site application to expand the capacity of an existing facility that exists west of Woodland Park and supports the Divide community. The service area does not currently include any lift stations, and the discharge is to Rule Creek, a recreation classified water. Right now, we are designing with the assumption that we will receive 0 dilution factor credit from Rule Creek. So the permitted capacity today is 35,000 gallons per day with an organic load of 105 pounds per day. The facility is essentially at capacity. A tap moratorium is in place in the service area. The facility does remain in compliance with permitted effluent limits. The service area is residential and commercial in nature, with the one exceptional connection being the Teller County Jail. Additional service areas, additional future planned development is residential in nature, with some commercial loadings. No industrial treatment is anticipated in the service area. However, an industrial pretreatment program is written into the governing code. The historical growth in the area of about 2% is perhaps somewhat been hindered by the lack of this facility being able to accommodate additional load. 7% is based on development plans, and hopefully it's understandable that 7% for a community that currently serves 155 single family equivalents, or a relatively small population, is quite different than for a city, a larger community. So forecasted flows for the expanded plant, again, existing is 35,000 gallons per day. The proposed maximum month average daily flow is 120,000 gallons per day, with a peak hour flow of 480,000 gallons per day. The existing facility has been operating very successfully. The schematic here on the right shows essentially the entirety of the treatment facility as it exists today. Flow is initially screened into an influent equalization basin, where from there, wastewater is pumped into one of 2 biological treatment basins. Following those 2 basins, wastewater is dosed with sodium hypochlorite, receives chlorine disinfection, and then flows through a support building where that chlorine is then removed and discharges, and then flow discharges to Rule Creek. The project we are presenting is not just an expansion, but an improvement to the existing process. The existing screening is a manual bar screen. We'll be adding mechanical bar screen, increasing equalization capacity, and converting much of the existing facility to support what will essentially be, and I'm going to go back up really quick, a new facility on the same site. So the existing facility will be repurposed to support the newer facility, which will look largely like what they have today, with some improvements, including the mechanical bar screen in the headworks and tertiary filtration prior to disinfection. And the existing chlorine disinfection system will be replaced with UV disinfection. Process flow diagram, happy to answer questions about that if there are any. Here is that same site plan as it's conceptualized today for this site location application. To address some of the questions that come up about supporting facilities and emergency operations, 3-phase power is available at the site. No water or gas service exists today. However, a new potable and gas service are planned from a neighboring development. New backup generator will be provided in a power loss event. Supplemental emergency influent overflow is going to be provided, not just with the influent equalization chamber, but an overflow into the West Solids Holding Basin. So here being the influent equalization, here being where our solids holding, and so additional influent capacity well above and beyond what's required for redundant storage capacity, odor control, and the site is fenced for security with remote controls on the operating system. The operator of this facility is currently Woodland Park. They operate a wastewater treatment facility, and their ORC is the ORC, the operator responsible charge of the Teller County wastewater utility facility. Woodland Park will continue to provide ORC and operator support, and Teller County will maintain the facility as part of its overall service area and support the expense through sewer rates. And then contingency operations, in addition to backup power and storage capacity, redundancy for all critical equipment as required for CDPHE. And once again, SCADA communications with an auto dialer, basically on-call operations staff lives within 30 minutes of the facility to respond to any alarms. Construction issues have been relatively minimal when we approach design. So nothing particularly noteworthy. Groundwater that we'll have to counteract buoyancy of, and native sandy clays that we will actually excavate below, and those that remain have a minimal swell protection. So the existing site is undeveloped in the proposed area disturbance. So overall, really important project for the community and Divide, and looking to move forward with this project and have a design submittal by the end of the year and begin construction shortly thereafter. So I'll leave it right there and ask if there are any questions.
Yes.
Chris Crockett with Kono. This is maybe more of a technical question for the CAC. I noticed on the memo that contains the action requested, in the summary, we're again talking about a site application for the Bradley lift station in the first paragraph. And first I couldn't figure out why every county has a Bradley lift station. But I think I've decided it might be an administrative oops. And then my question becomes,
That's
if
my
we
error.
are-
Thank you.
No, that's all right then. But as a result, is this document part of what we are asked to approve, or is it just the attachments?
It is just the attachment. So this item will be, the recommended motion would be to recommend that the Board of Directors approve the wastewater, the Teller County wastewater treatment plant or treatment facility site application.
Is that all you need, Chris? Okay. James, I do have a question. Are there safeguards in place? I'm guessing this is near Fountain Creek. In the event of flooding or something coming off of the mountain, are we protected against that?
So the new facility will be entirely out of the floodplain, and we have already received floodplain administrator support for our finished floor elevation, which lies 5 feet above existing 100-year floodplain.
Yeah. Judith?
I had a similar question. I meant to look, where does Rule Creek go? What does Rule Creek flow into?
Rule Creek is a stream segment and tributary to the Platte.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm getting this. This is Sheila Williams from Park County again. As the former postmaster in Divide, I want to tell you that that area is growing like crazy. And you really need this to protect not only the citizens of Divide, but the future citizens, because the wastewater is one of the biggest things that they have. And the area west will need a lift station, but I think you should be looking at that too. Sherwood Forest is an area that has grown, and it's well water is going to be contaminated by all this wastewater going into septic systems out that way.
Welling.
Welling Clark, El Paso County. Technically, the project looks very sound. I just want to see when I looked at the numbers and how that worked. Again, Jared, can you go to the application form? There were some questions with regards to that, which appeared to be information that, as a citizen, I couldn't tell if it was incomplete or not, and I would just like to go over that. Okay, keep scrolling down. Oh, stop right there. Go back up a little bit. On number 5, it said floodplain or natural hazard. Is the site located in a 100-year floodplain?
So Welling, I'll just,
Okay, good. I see
jump
it's on
in.
another page. I must have missed that one. Sorry. Bless you. Okay, no, go ahead and keep scrolling down. Okay. This is the one right here, number 9. It says general permit number question mark TBD. And it says, please attach a copy of the engineering report. Has that been done?
The bonus is certainly appreciated. This did come up in the Water Quality Management Committee meeting. When we submitted the site location application to SARC, we had not yet received our general permit. We have since. The general permit did not present any challenges that were not anticipated beyond magnesium at this time. So we are conducting some testing of background concentrations. There's a the stream segment that we discharge into Will Creek. Downstream of that, there's a 303 designation that applies a magnesium limit to our discharge permits. So that is something that we are investigating and will address in the design of the treatment facility itself. But a general permit is available to attach and update this submittal.
Okay, and so is a general permit number? Do you have that number that's available to submit?
I do. Would you like me to provide it now?
Well, from the standpoint of just seeing question marks, that raises a flag. If you have the actual number, if the correction could be put in place, that would solve that one issue. And it just went dark. Okay, there you go. And B, it says if preliminary affluence limits are required, please identify the document was received. The question I have is that section B non-applicable, or is it applicable? And if it was applicable, what was the date that the document was received?
Okay. Try to avoid making this challenging. Preliminary effluent limits do not exist because the state has moved to a permits first approach. So we have received our discharge permit, which also qualifies our water quality planning targets. So section B here is not applicable.
Okay, then I would welcome input in there saying that section was considered like NA non-applicable. That way it looks like there's not missing data. It has been covered and addressed. Okay, and okay. And Jared, was there anything else on that section I brought up with you earlier? I don't know if there was. It's just the 4 question marks really raised something, because I'll get asked that by the commissioners if I don't ask the question here. Okay. Let's keep scrolling. No. This is filled out pretty good overall. Okay, and again, that's the authorization. It's a parallel process. Understand that. Okay. So I don't have any questions with that, but there was something that was brought up in the previous project by one of our other members, Kathy Heisey, representing Callahan, where I saw a document in there, an attachment that said it would start in July of 2020 and I believe finish in August or September of 2020, and we're now in 2023. And thinking of that, here's a question I think all of us members have. If it's an administration approval, why is it years late? Is that a problem associated with the state, the county, the local jurisdictions, or what? It's in our mind, it shouldn't be late. And I don't know, it's probably not on you, but do you know, can you answer that question?
I want to clarify, was that question directed at me?
Yes, sir. If you have that answer, if not, I can direct it to PPACG. It's just that if we're having all of these administrative approval for delays or whatever it's called, this is supposed to be completed in 2020. It's now 2023, and we're applying for that to put this project into place. The question comes up: what caused the delay? And the administrative approval, was it something at a state level government, or what's causing that delay, so we can address that specific issue? If you can answer that, it'd be great. If not,
I will say that if the CAC was able to address the administrative extension, ubiquitous state status across the state, that would be really helpful. This facility has been operating under the administrative extension for 3 years, and I can't give you an answer different than I did for the previous project. The state has been working through permits across the state, starting at the top of each watershed. This facility being near the top of the watershed, South Platte watershed, actually was probably close to being picked up for permit renewal around the time that we submitted a new permit application. So my understanding is this facility will continue to operate under its administrative extension until this new permit is effective and this project is complete.
So does that mean the state changed its requirements and it's allowing this still to operate administratively, but that because of the requirements, that's why they did that? If they didn't change requirements, it would be operating, I would say, satisfactorily. Is that a correct statement? I'm just trying to understand, why do we have a significant, what's causing that administrative delay? Is it our state?
It is at the state level. It's workload at the state.
Okay, it's at the state level. And would that be something the CAC would then address to PPACG board about? No? Okay, I see a head shaking no. We have to elect new people, is that right then? Okay, I saw a nod. Okay, no, thank you for trying to address that. It was just that I know concerned some people, I'm sure why do we have 3-year delays in this? And that's at the state level. So is that the bureaucratic side or is that the elected official side?
You're asking me my personal opinion.
I know. Yeah, no, don't give me personal. It's just that who makes that determination? Is that elected officials? Because I will go to my elected officials if that's the case.
I think it's both, but fundamentally, as a professional in this industry, I do recognize the tremendous challenge. We are in a unique state with wastewater and new regulations that are being implemented, both to protect the environment, but people too, because these are recreational class rivers. So the rules are going to result in point source pollution, water quality that is, if I were a public representative, I would say is much higher and better.
Okay, no, thank you. I don't want you to say anything that gets you in trouble. If it's the government, I'll be reaching out to my elected representatives. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone online, Jared?
I'm not seeing anyone with their hand raised or who has tried to come off of mute
Okay.
as I stalled to wait for that.
Yes, we have a question here.
This is Sheila Williams, the at large in Park County. It's the same thing. Your wording on item number 12, which is page 4 of 6, just needs to be corrected. It's financial responsibility. It's a quirk I have. Sorry. Your wording is incorrect. It has what entity has the financially responsibility for owning and long-term operating expense of the proposed treatment works. It just needs to be financial.
Thank you. Anyone else? Hearing none, do we have a motion to move this forward to the board?
Well, in Clark, El Paso County, a motion I would make, because I've looked at the technical side of this project as well as the others, appears from what I can see is very well done. Administratively, there were some things that appear to be left out. If those corrections will be made prior to going before the PPACG board, I'm happy with it. I would also like a statement of PPACG to bring out that I have a concern that a lot of these projects are administratively extended or whatever they call that. And it's at the state level, it's beyond the local level, but it's something that does need to be addressed by our elected officials to the highest offices in the state. And I don't know how to exactly say that per se. I'll be glad to talk to the board if you would like me to. But I think the project technically has the merit to move forward, administratively make those corrections, and then I believe we need to push to the board. This CAC should push to the board the concern we have about these plans being administratively extended or whatever that terminology is. If we have a problem, we need to have our government address it and fix it.
Welling, for the purposes of
Yeah.
your motion, can we make the motion?
I
have-
motion that we move it forward with corrections to fill in the vacant data. So there are no misunderstandings and that all issues are addressed. And as a side note, I just want to say there is concern about these administrative delays that appear to be caused at the state level that impact local government and local areas. So
Sounds good.
Michelle, if you can massage that, that'd be great. But it's with the corrections in there and also the concern about these extensions, approval extensions.
I can note that in the notes.
That would be a good note.
I don't know that. I don't know whether the administrative extension delays falls under PPACG's wheelhouse, but I will talk to my leadership and come back to you with that.
Yeah, and the reason for the board is that they are county and municipal elected officials, and they have contacts with the state level legislation and entities up there. And so it's not directly associated with the motion, but it is a concern that was cited by others, and I think it's a very valid concern.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if you could do that as a motion and a comment. If you
Okay.
could include it that way.
A motion and a request.
Okay. Okay. Did everybody understand the motion at this point? Is there a second?
Terry Hayes, Monument, second.
Any additional discussion, comments?
Mr. Chair, I just want to recognize Mr. Starnes does have his hand raised.
Oh, please.
I don't mean to interrupt the motion. I certainly appreciate that. I just want to clarify it. It was the question 9 about the permit.
Yes.
Question marks. That was the one
Correct.
note that I have about what I need.
Right, that you would
add
put the
prior to
actual data.
board approval.
Right, that you would put the data into that, and then also the one underneath
Okay.
would be an NA.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we've had a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed?
No. Kathy Heisey.
Get the count, Danelle? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to item C, Broadmoor Seven Falls, and believe, Ann, this will be one more time for you.
Yeah, we should have Joe Good online to explain what the Broadmoor, it's the 1858 restaurant that they are making wastewater holding tank improvements on. I'll let Joe take it from here.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Share. Okay, yeah, let me share my screen here. There we go. This one. Okay. All right, can you see that?
We can, Joe. Thank you.
You bet. Good afternoon, everybody. So Seven Falls operates, the Broadmoor operates Seven Falls, and there's a restaurant, the 1858 restaurant, which is right here. And it's right at the end of the falls, if you have been up in there. And it was a few years ago, we had designed a system for under 2,000 gallons a day under local jurisdiction. And that was with the understanding of the amount of meals they would serve and keep it that way. Unfortunately, well, maybe fortunately for them, the demand was much higher and the flows increased to over 2,000 gallons a day. And so that's why we're talking to you today. Just to give you guys a little history on the site, we had originally designed Seven Falls. Again, up here, it's in a very tight canyon, very limited land. The creek is obviously right next to it here. That's why there's the falls. So back when we did the original system, and this is an overview of the leach fields here that we had installed. It was installed in this area. We have some pictures of what was the bed, the infiltrators here, to more or less a conventional system. This was the only place on the site where one could be installed due to the steep canyon and the proximity of bedrock, shallow bedrock, the creek, which is just on the opposite side of the road from this system, right in this area. The creek is right over down here on the bottom of this drawing. So we had it installed and they were operating, but because of the demand, the system failed just due to high flows. And at that time, we were looking at alternatives for the site. And because it ended up, their usage is over 2,000 gallons a day, it pushed it up to the Colorado PPACG for approval and the system. Because of the canyon, we looked at the option of tying into the city. Right here, you'll see that's the city's CSU service area, and Seven Falls is right here, which on this map doesn't look like it's very far. However, when you go down and you really look at it, it's over 7,000 feet to the closest connection is here. And right now, this system from here down would not be adequate. We have a letter or signature from CSU stating that they can't take it at this point. Or there's a point up here as well, but it's over 7,000 feet to get to those points, making it economically unfeasible. The eventual plan is to tie into city utilities at some point when either it's closer or the Broadmoor possibly can fund up the project to get to that point. So with all that being said, and we have looked at flows, we monitored the restaurant right here, and the peaks look really high, and they are. However, the average flow in 19 was 1,996 for the restaurant, and 600, or we actually didn't have any 19 because they had to bring in a temporary restroom facility, but in 18 we had 710. But it's the peak events that they have there that push this system where you really can't put something in the canyon. And there's really not room for any other room for a leach field or really any other treatment system. And again, the eventual plan would be to tie into the city at some point in the future. In discussing this with the state, and they have a copy of the report already. Right now, people are on board to what we're proposing because of the constraints is a vault system, which you see right here. It's 25,000 gallon capacity, which gives them room to hold for 48 hours at times when they need to pump it as needed. And it will be pumping, and the Broadmoor knows that they're going to be pumping it, and it's going to be relatively expensive. But this, at this point, is their best alternative. The flows from the restaurant here, gravity down to this point, which this line is already in because of the leach field that we had. So they won't be modifying that. Backing up just a minute too, we did have an advanced microbiotics treatment up here for the leach field that will probably not be needed with the vaults. And this restroom here, which if you've been up there in the last few years, was closed down just because of the volume and trying to get everything approved through the state. They had some temporary bathrooms in here that they were pumping those. The plan would be to then take those temporaries away, and this facility here would then again be tied into this system, which again is a closed system to eliminate contamination of the creek and be a pumping system. Not the most ideal situation, but the only one for now temporarily. And when I say temporarily, we're talking a few years still. But the Broadmoor is aware of this, and they had been operating with some other tanks in here temporarily to pumping things out while we were getting things approved. Don't think the flows, we've been monitoring flows, so we know, again, it's peaks that are usually about a week long in the summer when they have big events that come in July and August on given days, when they do get a lot of guests and people coming from the Broadmoor and are having their meals at the 1858 restaurant. I think that's all I've got. If you've got any questions about the system, we've been working on it for a few years. Again, back originally it was a on-site leach field that just isn't feasible with the amount of flows now.
Allow the people to go first.
Got a question, Judith?
I do. Have there been any public meetings in the neighborhood about the option?
There were, not necessarily public, back when we originally had the original system done, yes, there were public meetings and postings, and I don't know if there have been any recently. They were a few years ago, yes.
I just know from friends who live in the area that there's considerable concern about increased development in many respects in that area due to, as you mentioned, the steepness and the narrowness.
Yeah, this isn't proposing any new development. This is only to service the existing restaurants that is there.
Correct. Thank you.
Yes.
Chris Crockett, Kono. This is a little bit different animal than what we have looked at previously. So, and I understand that the Broadmoor is doing the construction, and then the Broadmoor will do the maintenance of it as well, with the hope to, did you say eventually tie into city services? Is that correct?
Yeah, that is the hope, to tie into city services. They will not do
Any
the
idea when that might happen?
Well, originally it was a 2 to 3 year window, but we're not sure with the funding today and how things are going.
Okay.
But the Broadmoor will not construct it. A local approved septic installer and tank installer will install the system. But yes, it will be maintained and operated by the Broadmoor once it is installed. But it will be an approved county installer to put the system in.
Okay. Is there an expectation or I don't know, should the Broadmoor be asked to provide some sort of bond in case their maintenance isn't up to the standards of CSU? Or what is the protection for city properties, given the fact that this will be maintained by a private entity that I assume the city has no control over? And then I guess my other, I just wanted to clarify as well, physically, the wastewater will be held in these holding tanks, and apparently grease will also be held in these holding tanks and then somehow pumped out to a CSU wastewater treatment facility. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. There will be
And then-
there will be a grease trap above the tanks. The grease typically will not go straight to the tanks. There'll be a grease trap to separate that, but that will be pumped as well. And it will be pumped to a CSU facility. And in terms of once to get this, the Broadmoor will have to have a service agreement in place with the pumping company. And one of the things that I think is not necessarily a protection, but this site is located well within their property. It's not near property, and if they have a spill, it's going to be on their property.
Right.
And so from that standpoint, it's not like there's an adjacent property that if a spill were to occur, it would get, I
Could
mean,
be
eventually it could get there, but
Okay.
it's their own property.
I suppose that's true. And what is are we at all concerned about the capacity of the wastewater treatment that it will be pumped into?
Well, it'll be taken and delivered to CSU, and they have not expressed any concerns at this point.
At this point.
And CSU
Okay.
being Colorado Springs Utilities.
All right. Thank you.
I think Ann's online.
Hi, yes, this is Ann Esch in Green Mountain Falls. And I find this so interesting because Green Mountain Falls population has grown and we do not have a wastewater system. We have cesspools and septic tanks, but not a lot of land. And so that is a looming problem for us. But I'm wondering, did you have to get permission or will you have to get it from the health department? From the county health department. They have regulations also about dealing with this type of problem.
Yes, we will, and we have, and the county has seen this. They were involved with the initial system that was installed on the site, and they have been involved and reviewed what we have done. Because it is over 2,000 gallons a day, it is now pushed to the state level, and Kat Garvey has been, Kat McGarvey, she has been on many of our calls and has, she will be one of the people that will be signing off on it as well, yes.
I wondered because I know that I'm also on the Planning Commission of Green Mountain Falls, and there are some tricky health department rules. And but you can always try to express hardship, and so that they can do some innovation. So perhaps that's what you're doing in this case also. And I think it's very interesting because I'm 86 years old, so I remember this place forever. And the population and the visitors are just overwhelming. My children are here visiting and they had to have a time to go up Pikes Peak. And they could only stay a little bit and come back. So it's just overwhelming to all of you. I wish you good luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
You have another question, Judith? Your mic's on.
I just still am concerned with the immediate neighborhood. There may not be any new construction, but the Broadmoor does have control over the number of people. And one of the things that they've done in the last 10 years is greatly increase the flow to this site with their shuttles, which I know has been concern of the neighborhood. So it may not be physical construction, but they do have the ability to control the number of visitors, which apparently it's the number of visitors that are creating the problem. So that's why I was concerned about having input from the immediate neighborhood.
Welling?
Welling Clark, El Paso County Representative. Jared, can you bring up the application? Again, the primary thing I wish to address separately from what's been brought forward is there's a lot of white space in the application I would like clarified. So wait for that to come up. Okay. Just go ahead and scroll down. And just for verification, this is basically like a holding tank that's going to be being piped out that will then go down the canyon and hook into CSU. That's my understanding of this project. Okay.
Initially, it will not be piped, it will be trucked until such time as.
Oh,
pipe is
okay.
available.
It's going to be trucked.
Pumped out.
Is that in that application? Because I didn't see trucking in there. It may have been in.
I don't know that we've specifically described it in there. Because they are vaults, it kind of implies that you don't have any connection with a pump when you have a piping system when you have vaults in the site. So
Okay.
And this will be clarified more as we get to final and get this all the way up to the state level.
Okay, from my standpoint, to approve the project, I would like that information in there, because if there's an automobile accident, we're going to have a slight mess, for pardon the pun. Okay. Going to site like number 3, I did see the maps. They were in there and all. One thing I would recommend with the maps is there were a lot of red squares and green dots and some other things in there, but there's no legend describing what those were. That was just a question that arose as a citizen. I would, kind of, what does all that information mean? Is that utilities or something? Because it's just a question. I would recommend, if you do have a legend for that, to put it in place before this goes to the PPACG board. Yeah, it's from utilities. I'm sure they
Yes,
should
it
provide
is.
you a legend for better understanding.
Yeah, we can definitely clarify that.
Okay, no, it was just, it's when you see something like that and there's no legend on a map, that's going to basically bring a question up. If you have it, that'll mitigate a question being asked. Can we go back to the application, Jared? Thank you for being ambidextrous there, Jared. Okay, scroll just up a little bit to number 3. Okay. Number 3 is site location. Is the present zoning of the site location, ? That is blank. The zoning within 1 mile radius of this, that is blank. Going down floodplain, is this in a 100-year floodplain? That block is blank. And section B, if it is, that's blank. I don't think it's in a floodplain. If that gets flooded, I think we're all in trouble. Okay. But that was a question. Nearby facilities, that is blank. And that's sanitation districts within 5 miles downstream of the proposed wastewater treatment facility. Since this is being trucked, I would like something in there to address that, per se, to add clarification for the board when they review it, so they fully understand the nearby facilities issue. Okay, and let's scroll down again. Okay, other, that's filled in, that's good. Pumped vault, offsite treatment and disposal with reliable sanitation services. Services is, see. Okay, that's our English teachers are on the job. Yeah. I would recommend that that reliable sanitation services be described. What would those be? That would be the trucking aspect of it. Number 8. Okay. Yes. I mean, that's just for clarification purposes to mitigate questions being asked at the board. The affluent limits.
Yeah, that would be an NA because we're not applying it really.
Great. I would welcome NA being put in there before it goes before the board. And then it says downstream distances. That says discharge. That would be NA, because you could say it'd be trucked or whatever. I'm not sure what's proper for that. CSU should. And then downstream facilities from the discharge point of the nearest other point of the diversion. I'm not sure how you would say for a trucking, but some clarification, because this will be on road systems per se. Go in there.
I think that would be an NA also, just because we're not discharging.
And I would recommend that in there for clarification purposes, so it looks like all the issues actually have been addressed. And I don't think there's anything below that, Jared. You can go ahead down. I think everything else is filled out.
We're good.
I think you're good. If that information that I cited can be put in there, that would be acceptable to me. I know a question that's going to arise since you're trucking it now is, how long will it be trucked? Who pays for it? If there's an accident, who pays for the cleanup? And then also, when is the Broadmoor expected to be bringing a infrastructure project to PPACG to establish a pipeline instead of a trucking of the facilities? I would recommend identifying how many truckloads per day would be created, just to have that available, because that will be a concern to the local citizens.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, those are just concerns I want to bring up to mitigate questions and concerns. Okay, out.
Yes.
I apologize for not reading as carefully as Welling has. I just sort of felt that this is an area that I don't know much about, so I looked at it, but I didn't read it as intently, and I apologize for not doing that. But the trucking brought to mind something I totally missed, is that one of the major concerns of the neighborhood in that area, it's a really important concern that they've been to city council many times, is the issue of any kind of congestion and way to escape the canyon in the case of fire, because it is definitely the entire area is in the WUI. So the whole truck aspect I had totally missed. I apologize, but that's why I keep asking about whether or not they've had meetings with the neighbors, because the neighbors have been very concerned for a number of years, and it's especially the evacuation in the case of an emergency. And certainly the trucks add to that issue considerably. So to me, it's a concern that apparently if they haven't told us if they have notified all of the neighbors of this change. Thank you.
Anyone else? Did we get a clarification on how many trucks per day there would be?
No, we don't, it varies. During the non-peak times, it will be likely a couple a week. During the peak times, they may be, and we don't know yet, and it depends on, they were using reliable sanitation there. It depends on the capacity of their trucks. They obviously don't bring in large trucks because of the roads there. But during the peak times, it could be one a day, and I know they're going to try to make those so they're not during the peak times of operation. But we don't have a detailed schedule of that at this point.
Okay. Anyone else? And I'm seeing no one online. At this point, we're ready for a motion if there's one.
I mean, the last two, I'm going to sit and read.
This is Miley Foster representing El Paso County. So I recommend approval of the site location application request, given the application be completed. In other words, the blank spaces should either have an answer or an NA in there so that it's clear that all the questions have been answered. So given that, I recommend approval of the site location application request for the Broadmoor 7 Falls wastewater holding tanks.
Welling Clark, I will second, but I would also like to offer a friendly amendment to include in that motion that the number of vehicles per day per week be also included in that in the recommendation for knowledge for the local residents in the neighborhood.
Is that okay with you, Miley?
Miley, is that okay with you?
That's acceptable to me.
Okay, so that's a friendly, so Welling Clark accepts or seconds the new nomination or whatever you call it, or whatever.
Okay.
Motion.
We have a motion and a second. Open it up for discussion.
Just a point of clarification. Is there a time component to this? Are we in a big rush to do this? The previous applications had deficiencies, but they were somewhat minor. This particular one has a lot of questions and a lot of, I think, things that need to be addressed before we get to the point of doing it. I recognize we have a motion on the table, but I would like it clarified as to how quickly PPACG wants this addressed.
Anne, do you have an answer for that?
I think we can treat it just like we did the other two, that the blanks get filled in and clarification provided prior to going to the board. I think those are easy fixes from what I'm hearing.
So do I understand a clarification includes a timeline?
Yeah, whatever
you-
you guys want can be clarified. Yeah, I would just have them
I
submit.
think the timeline's essential in this one.
Wheeling Park, El Paso County, hearing the request for a timeline, given that if we are exceeding peak flow, we have a problem right now. And I guess the real intent of the question is, when is this problem going to be solved, or are we going to have an overflow discharge?
Chris Crockett with Kono, and I appreciate that. But what I'm also, I mean, that's an anecdotal answer to a specific question. And what I was hoping for is to know what the official answer to the question was, especially given that I'm also anecdotally hearing that the amount of flow can be regulated somewhat by the Broadmoor in a ticketing process as much as anything else. So, and I still don't understand if if they need an answer today, kind of thing.
Well,
But
they will-
I'm not comfortable with this. Sorry.
Just to add, the Broadmoor wants to get the full vault system in so they can have capacity to make it a safe, and they don't have a spillage on the site. Then they can operate. They will have to limit it until they get all the vaults in. But once the vaults are in, and it can become a much safer to the environment from the restroom standpoint and from the operation of the facility to prevent any kind of spillage on the site.
So
Those,
go ahead.
this is Gary Sugar, citizen at large. So the documentation shows construction to occur in August and September of 2020. So that obviously didn't happen. So what is the proposed start dates for site excavation and preparation?
Well, the original 2020, we should have fixed that before we sent it in. That was prior to, that was all put together prior to COVID. Things got delayed because of COVID, and they couldn't operate the restaurant at all. But the plan is to, as soon as they get approval to start installing the field, the installer's already on board to do that. And so it becomes an issue. The sooner, if we get this thing approved now, we can still meet a construction schedule this summer, fall. Otherwise, if it gets into winter, then it delays it another year or so.
That answer your question on that? Kinda.
ASAP?
The bottom line is they'll have it done in 4 months once they start.
Okay. One other question. Is the Broadmoor in a position to hold back capacity to prevent overflows? You know,
Yeah,
'cause
they control the usage of the restaurant, and they control the amount of people that go in there on a given day. And so, yes, I mean, my understanding is yes, they can. I don't know how they've been doing that. They also have the visitors that use the restroom, which contributes to the flow, but the restroom flow is minimal compared to the restaurant.
Ann?
I was just going to say, you mentioned that a lot of these projects were put in place 3 years ago, and they haven't been brought up before now. I imagine that was all done in anticipation of development and increased people coming and moving to Colorado or coming to Colorado to visit. And but I sort of agree, as you discussed. I think the Broadmoor they've already done it with Pikes Peak. I think they should be trying to help more than they are. Thank you.
That was insane.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Yes, Judith.
Hopefully my last one. So I participated in the North Cheyenne Canyon Master Plan a couple of years ago with a similar issue. And one of the issues was the issue of carrying capacity. And there's a lot of literature on carrying capacity. And to me, this is an example of a potentially exceeding carrying capacity due to the geology of the site. It's maybe unrealistic to think that we can continue to add people and meet all of the needs that are required for the safety of the community. So I will be voting no on the proposal as much as we know about it today. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, we have a motion and a second on the table. If you choose to vote no on it, doesn't pass, we can discuss something else. But at this point, oh, well,
I have a question. Okay.
Welling's got one more question.
Okay. Well, El Paso County, this is just trying to get a simple clarification based on a lot of the inputs. And this is a question that may not be able to be answered because it addresses the Broadmoor determination of operations. Will the Broadmoor limit the volume at the restaurant to ensure that the capacity of the system is not exceeded until the project is put in place? I don't know if that can be answered or not by the people present.
I'm not sure I can answer that, although I think I can add that it only makes sense that they would do that because they would be contaminating their own site.
That is what I had a concern about. If it was larger, does that then flow into that creek?
It's already.
If it had a spill, it could eventually get to the creek. They would have to have a fairly significant spill for that to happen.
Cheyenne Creek, yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And do you have another question?
Well, I was just gonna say, I think they're already on the line. You know, they're gonna be shut down if they don't do something. That's true with a lot of these places that, you know, with environmental standards and so forth. When it gets overloaded, it's just like up in Teller County. They've had to do more because there are more people. So it's a very difficult problem, especially in the mountains. So I kind of feel like we need more information. Thank you.
Don't approve it, and they've got to reduce it.
Anyone else? Okay, at this point, we do have a motion and a second. If you're in favor at this point, say aye. And we probably better do a count on this one. Hold your hands up so Danelle can get a count. And that's to move it forward to the board. And if you're opposed,
The lack of information, basically.
and requiring more information or whatever.
Jared, do we need can the person who seconds the motion vote
Yeah.
against the, okay,
Yes, the second is just so it goes to discussion.
perfect.
And information may come forward that makes the motion makers can actually go against their own motion.
For those online, just because I just want to make sure I'm recognizing the hands raised and the hands lowered and that kind of thing. If we could do a voice vote, starting with Ann Esch.
I thought
yeah.
no.
No. And then Denisa Sultana.
No.
Thank you.
Yeah, we got a total on that.
Can we go around the room as well? Would that be all right?
Sure, certainly.
So starting first,
Can we start with Judith?
that's where I was going to start. So let's do that. Yep.
Bill Bowles, yes.
Warren Clark, no.
And Ed Dills, no.
Roy Rosenthal, Manitou Springs, no.
Gary Sugar, yes.
Chris Crockett, Kono, no.
Terry Hayes Monument, yes.
Danelle, I have this, and if you can double check my count, I have yays are 6, nays are 7.
That's what I have as well.
So this is Gary Sugar, citizen large again. Then if we're going to vote no, I think we need to give a recommendation, a specific recommendation to the board on why we're voting no. And from what I've sensed, the reason is because there's no assurance that the Broadmoor is not going to exceed the current capacity of the system in place until the new system is built and constructed. So if the Broadmoor would ensure that they don't exceed that capacity, then I think we would vote to approve to move forward because the project will solve the problem, but we're concerned that there's going to be issues until the project gets finished.
Well, in Clark, El Paso County, spot on, sir. That's the concern I have is will the operations be curtailed to prevent exceeding capacity until this project is approved? If that's the case, I will change my vote to yes, but I have no guarantee or assurances at this point in time.
Roy Rosenthal, Manager Springs. I think it's a little broader than that. I think we need more information in general. And I think it's the Broadmoor's responsibility to present it to us. We're supposed to make decisions based on information, and I don't think we have enough.
Jared, Danelle, I'm not sure which. Is this something that we can bring back next month with more information?
That would actually fall under Ann Werner's wheelhouse, I believe.
Is Ann still online?
I'm not seeing Ann still on the outline.
She come back next week. I'm going to go over the questions and comments that were made. Come back and address.
We can get clarification on, but I believe that the Broadmoor right now has not been using the facility until they get something replaced with the old system having problems that it did have, but I would need to get clarification on that.
I would welcome that and have a rep here.
Yeah, it would be beneficial if we had that information, I think. And Kathy, go ahead.
Kathy Heisey, Calhan, on page 188, under the pre-existing facilities section, it talks about the 600 square foot visitor restrooms will come back online after the holding tanks are installed. Currently, they have portable facilities up there that they're already pumping, is what I'm seeing in the application.
Okay.
So with that, what?
I just want to note Ann has her hand raised online. Ann.
Go ahead, Ann.
Oh, I don't think I meant to, but I will chime in, and I just think we just need more information. That's all my concern. It's not just one thing. It's quite a few. So thank you.
Come back next month.
Yeah, I think we do have a little additional information from the page 181 that helps.
That doesn't guarantee.
But it doesn't guarantee, yeah, I was going to take the words out of my mouth. Well, but anyway, if at all possible, I would like to see more information come back next month, next meeting. And possibly even have somebody from the Broadmoor answer some questions if that's in line. So I think we're possibly approving something without having a total picture here. And
This is Miley Foster, El Paso County. I think we owe them to be pretty clear on what information we need, not just in general. We can't say, bring us back more information. I think we need to tell them very specifically what it is we want to know. And as an example, very specifically, we want confidence that the Broadmoor won't take advantage of the situation. And I actually don't think they will, because it's going to cost them money if they do. And that's very important to them. But on the other hand, I think it's important that we don't just say we need more information. We need to be very specific. More information about what? And anyway, that's what I think.
yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. So when the no votes happen, right, and they happen, right? So there's one or two things that usually happen. For the most part, the applicant or whoever says, you know what? Sometimes I hear voices in my head. And it's not saying to eat chocolate, so I'm thinking it's a different voice than I normally hear. Sorry. So anyway, when there's a no, sometimes the applicant, and again, most of the time we're dealing with jurisdictions. And that this particular case, because of the nature of the permitting process, it is a private entity. So it's a little different. But normally what happens is the applicant sort of usually, if there's not consensus, they pull back and they say, let me get you the right information and we'll be back next month. Sometimes they say, time is of the essence, we can't wait, and for whatever reason, whether it's a good reason or if it's not a good reason, that's not up to us to do. But usually, ultimately, the decision of what happens next falls with our executive committee. So we go to the executive committee and we say, this went to the CAC. The CAC voted no, 7-6. And so we need to know what you want to do. Sometimes, and this is a possibility, and hopefully nobody gets too upset about it, they say, this is something that we need to act on. So while it's great information, still put it on the agenda and still bring it to us. Or they could say, don't put it on our agenda. There's no need for us to rehash this and have an ugly sort of thing that takes an hour and a half or whatever at the board level. So it's up to the board leadership to tell us what's next. So when you say, is it coming back or is it not coming back? That's not my call. That's not Ann's call if she was still on the call or not. But again, it is up to what the timelines are involved, as well as what the PPACG leadership feel. So that's what's going to happen next, is we'll go back and we'll say, this was a 6-7 vote. What do you want to do? I suspect, and again, if some of you are talking to that very leadership, want to say, yeah, to make sure it kicks back to the CAC, then you'll see this again. Or they could say, nope, we understand that time is of the essence, and this X or Y is going to happen. There's a big conference coming, and very important folks are coming to the restaurant or something, and they need to be open, or blah, 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 right? It's the next World Peace Summit or whatever, and they're going to sign whatever. Again, things I don't know about, things beyond my control, definitely could happen. They say, go ahead and bring it. And if you bring it, make sure that these things get addressed beforehand, so we don't have a situation like we just had here. Hopefully that's helpful. I know it's a little wishy-washy, but I'm a bureaucrat and that's my job.
Fair enough.
Can I say something?
Yeah, well,
Okay. Welling Clark, El Paso County. The two things, if that's the case and it needs to move forward, can we, I'm not sure how to do this, but the recommendation I would have is that this goes before the board, that it was very controversial because of lack of information or understanding. And I would change my vote to a yes if I could have a guarantee from the Broadmoor that they would ensure operations did not exceed the capacity until this project was completed. And then also to provide information that until this project, until they get a pipeline in there, what is the number of vehicles that will be traveling, and that's for the neighborhood. Those two issues to me would resolve my vote, and I would then change it. I don't know about the rest of the CAC. I like to have things, pardon? Those were the big issues, and if they can be addressed between now and the board, would the CAC be comfortable with saying, send our vote to the board? Here's our two big issues. If the Broadmoor can address it, that addresses 90% of the problem. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
May I make a comment? Chris Crockett with Kono. A question for you. Does the board get minutes of our discussion on a topic like this that is somewhat controversial? Hopefully that will be helpful. I recognize we are an advisory committee and they can choose to take our advice or not, and that's fine, but I feel like we've done our due diligence in letting you all know our thoughts.
We do give them minutes. However, the minutes are generally very brief because we do record all of our meetings and provide those as well if members of the board or others have questions, they can go back to the video and actually see exactly what was said rather than,
And again, I would stress that I think part of this is that conversation of, we had an item, it did not move forward. What is the thing? So there is a conversation that happens with the executive leadership of what moves forward. I would suspect that, and forgive me if I get your name wrong, Mr. Good. Oh, wait, he's leaving. What did I said,
I'm here.
there he is. I'm sure he's already been on the phone with the Broadmoor and his client, right? So I think our first thing is going to be sort of touch base with them, find out what their timeline is. And if they're like, look, let's just, it might just very well stop with a conversation with Mr. Good. And he says, we're happy to bring it back. Bring it back next month. We're going to fill in all the blanks. We're going to find out all this information, right? And after that conversation with him, and he says, just bring it back, we bring it back. If he's like, no, we've talked to the Broadmoor folks and we need to do stuff, then again, I'm paid well, but I'm not paid that well. I don't make that decision, right? So that's gonna get bumped up to our board of directors, and ultimately they're going to decide, do you want to hear it with the voting history that we've had to date with the 6-7, or do you want to just kick it back? So, and Mr. Good, do you want to chime in here?
We will be in touch with Broadmoor. My feeling is, and all these are very good points, and I think we can have them all addressed fairly easily and quickly. And I think they're going to want to move forward because of the timing with it. But I think we will have answers to those, and I think there will be answers along the lines of what you guys are wanting to hear, because they don't want a problem with this site either. And my understanding is, at the moment too, they may not even be using this facility because of we had to take out part of that existing tanks, and I think they're taking and running food between the Broadmoor and this site, and not even using this kitchen on site at the moment. But I don't have that. I can't say that definitely, but that's my understanding of what's happening. But I think they're going to want to move forward. I think we can answer all these questions and have them in a favorable stance. That if it went back to the directors with all this stuff clarified, I think it would be favorable.
A question. It's our vote's taken, obviously it's 7-6. Can it go to the board with the 2 caveat notes that we have now as the reasons why we voted the way we did, so that they know?
Yeah, we'll discuss that with the executive committee, and
Okay.
that would go forward to
So
the
I
board
think
as
if
well.
they've got that, they would understand, and that would take us a long ways down the road.
Mhm.
Yeah. That way they know why we voted the way we did.
And again, our job would be, okay, executive committee, here's an item that was voted down 6-7. Here were the concerns. Oh, by the way, we've talked to Mr. Good and his firm and representing the Broadmoor, and they've given these responses. That might very well have them go, oh, I think that's cool. Maybe they wouldn't say cool, but they would say, yeah, we agree. Let's go ahead and put it on the agenda. Or they could say, yeah, that's nice, but at the end of the day, we want it to go back, and they might send it back. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast. When there is any sort of things that the region does that doesn't come through consensus, there's always a little bit of hesitation to move forward with it. So sometimes you have people who want to just vote no, and that always makes it difficult, because when there is a real good reason for that voting no, it kind of messes things up, for lack of a better term. So that being said, I think, like I said, at this point, we can handle it at the staff level.
Okay.
But don't be surprised if it comes back to you again next month. I think either way, I think we could commit that whatever the outcome of all the decision is that we would send out an email. So if we send out an email that says, hey, Mr. Good and the Broadmoor have said these are the answers. We think that they've been answered. The executive leadership is going to take it to the board. We can still send you an email saying what's happening. And if it's something that you don't want to happen, you feel free to show up to the board meeting and say, hey, you have this under advisement. I was one of the 7 who voted against it. And I see what the answers were, but I still want to vote against it. And here's why. This is America. You're allowed to do that, and nobody wants to take that right away from you.
Mr. Chair, I just want to note that Ann has her hand raised.
I was just gonna say, I think this is wonderful because this is our job. And I've been doing this for 5 years on the PPRTA also. This is the first time in all these 5 years that the negatives were in the majority. And I do remember quite a few years ago, I went to the board because I was not in favor of something. And I spoke and told them why, and they voted yes anyway. But that, like John said, this is America, and the Citizens Advisory, I think it's really great that people are thinking hard about this and not just saying yes always. Thank you.
I think that's appropriate.
Okay. Right. Oh,
Yes, thank you, John.
John, I just want to say thank you. Welling Clark, El Paso County. I just want to notify the CAC that I will be submitting my input to the county commissioners to let them know of this. So they're advised in advance. Okay, because I represent them. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and again, this whole process is intended to inform the process and make good decisions, right? And so if you don't feel you have the information to make a good decision, this is what the intent of the process is. There's no predetermined thought that anything should be quote unquote rubber stamped, right? So you've given input to the process. We'll now have some trust in the process and we'll let it move forward. But that being said, I would encourage anybody who's appointed by a certain elected official say, hey, just so you know, this is why we did this. Just so that way, when they get there, they're not caught flat-footed. And we kind of, again, we've maybe taken a little more time on this than the agenda had allowed, right? But that being said, we want to make sure that we don't have that same sort of a thing up front. So any information you've gathered, let's defeat that learning curve and share to the extent you're comfortable sharing that with the folks that you represent.
My compliments to PPACG staff.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so that we can move on here, let's go to item D and let Danelle do some speaking here.
I'm actually going to let Jess take this one today, and I will assist with any questions she might need. Yes.
Hello, Jess Bechtel, PPACG Transportation Program and Project Delivery Planner. So Danelle helps me out with all of this and is teaching me the ropes. Today, we hopefully have an easy one for you after those site applications. So we recently met with the TAC and had a workshop to discuss and redistribute some return funds for multimodal options funds and carbon reduction program funds. And so all we're doing here is an amendment to the TIP to redistribute those funds. And so at the workshop, it was discussed that the full amount of MMOF funds of $45,000 should be awarded to Mountain Metro Transit for cost overruns for their downtown shuttle operations project. So it's already existing in the TIP and everything. The recommendation from the TAC was also to approve $200,000 in the carbon reduction program funds to Monument Jackson Creek program project that they have going on up there. And then the remainder of the available CRP funds in the amount of $669,295 would be awarded to Mountain Metro Transit for the purchase of hybrid buses. So that was what they came up with in the workshop, and the applications and questionnaires were provided with the memo for your review. So hopefully you had a chance to take a peek at those if you were curious for more information on how the funding was split up and what it was going to. I am happy to answer any questions, provide more detail, more information on what the tip is if needed. But hopefully we spelled it out for you. So let me know.
Any questions? Yes.
Yeah, Gary Sugar, Citizen at Large. Can you explain again the source of these funds?
Sure, yes. So the CRP is the Carbon Reduction Program funds, and the MMOF is the Multimodal Options Fund. So those come from, let me put my spreadsheet here because it's a lot. So the Carbon Reduction Program is to support the reduction of transportation emissions, and it's the new federal funding from the IIJA, the new funding. How would you explain that?
It was a new funding program established by the IIJA.
Yes. There we go. get going and talking too fast. So new IIJ funding that is distributed out from CDOT to the state. And so we oversee just how that's spread out. That's what this is doing. So
We got this from CDOT.
it's federal through CDOT, then out through us. So we just manage, that's what the tip does. It just manages it for the next 4 years and how it's allocated. Yep.
Anyone else? The one online? Do we have a motion to accept this?
Terry Hayes Monument, I move to accept a tip amendment to redistribute CRP and MMOF to the Board of Directors.
And a second. Okay, any discussion, comments, hearing? Oh, okay. Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed? Well, Jess, yours goes faster.
Good job. I did it.
Kept it in the fence.
Okay, item E, Danelle, are you doing that one yourself?
I am. I'm doing this one myself today. So today we have a document called the Unified Planning Work Program, which is a kind of convoluted name, but basically it documents for 2 years what our transportation staff is going to work on with our federal consolidated planning grant funding that comes to us from the Federal Highways Administration and the Federal Transit Administration. And then in addition to that, in section 5 of the document, it also has a list of any transportation related planning activities that are going on within our MPO region, so our Metropolitan Planning Organization region, also within the next 2 years. So we're federally required to put this together every 2 years. You might remember last year we did an amendment. So every off year, we usually do an amendment to kind of update it, make sure everything's still in alignment. But basically the document is detailing what our transportation staff is going to do and anything related within the community. Happy to answer any questions about the UPWP itself, if there's any details in that document that you'd like to talk about as well. And I should clarify, we're not looking for a recommendation for the board to approve today. We're actually looking for a recommendation for the board to release this to public comment. We are required to release this document for a 30-day public comment period. So if you do go back and look at it and say, hey, I have additional questions on that, please feel free to email us or let us know in the next CAC meeting. And that way we will be able to document all of those public comments and implement them as needed.
Any questions? Well, Miley?
Well, I was going to make the motion.
Oh, okay.
Then I because I have it right here on my phone. I make the motion to recommend the Board of Directors approve the release of the, what is that, financial fiscal year?
Yes.
2024 FFY 2025, the UPWP for public comment.
Well inclined.
Second. Oh,
Sec,
sorry.
okay, you beat me. Go, Judith.
Judith got the second.
Judith Rice Jones, League of Women Voters, always happy to support releasing for public comment. Thank you.
I have a question. What is if this is passed today and then is passed by the board, what will the window of public comment be?
Start and stop.
That is a great question. Our board of directors meeting is the 12th, if I remember correctly. So we would likely need to prepare an advertisement for that and make sure that it gets out on the website. I would anticipate that actually being released about the 14th of July, and then that would span out until mid-August.
Okay. Anyone else? Anyone online? Seeing none? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and that was it. Do we have Jason online still? Since it's been such a long time.
Is there?
Yep, still here. Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to introduce the regional freight study and then turn that over to our consultant team to give a little presentation. So Jason O'Brien, Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments Transportation Planner. I'll just give you the background portion and put some things in context. So a couple of years ago, it was recognized that the region would probably benefit from having a freight plan. Board members concurred. We secured funding. And early this year, we hired Cambridge Systematics to lead the freight plan. We wanted to do this for a couple of reasons. The main ones are related to getting money to the region. First, we want to be able to support our member governments in their freight-related grant applications. This has come up a few times, and we found ourselves wishing that we had more data, more information, more policies that would support those member governments in seeking outside grant applications for their projects. So we want to be in a position to do that. And second, there are quite a few federal and state freight-related planning program dollars going around, and we want to make sure that the region gets its fair share. And otherwise, it would just be nice to know if there are any clear freight-related goals, projects, or corridors that emerge once we take a good look at this. We've never really put this type of document together before. It's a first of its kind. And that's one reason why it's a study and not a plan. There really hasn't been any groundwork laid for a study focused on freight in the past. So the document that we're going to produce by the end of the year will be mainly focused on laying out needs, existing conditions, and data, although we would like to identify some key freight corridors. And with that, I'll turn it over to Evan Anderson and team of Cambridge Systematics. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Just confirming you can hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to present on this. I'm going to bring up a presentation here, but my name is Evan Anderson. I'm a principal with Cambridge Systematics. We are a transportation planning firm based out of, well, national, but based out of Denver, and have supported CDOT, Dr. Cog, and a number of other regions on freight planning work. So really excited to help advance this study, and as Jason noted, really kind of help position the region for success. We're going to run through relatively briefly here today, just kind of a grounding on what the regional freight study is, then actually share some results on some initial data and findings that we have to date, and then give you a little bit of an update on what is coming next for this study as we kind of look towards the end of 2023 and wrapping this one up. Certainly encourage questions and comments. And with that, as Jason noted, this really is a first of its kind for PPACG and really for many medium-sized communities across the country. Freight really is an emerging issue. So it's really important for this organization to be proactive and really start thinking about the future of goods movement. We heard a lot of discussion today about just the growth in Colorado. Every visitor and every resident and every business brings along demand for goods with it. We're really being collaborative and working very closely with stakeholders, really engaging a broad group of industry, business, partner agencies and organizations, including the military, as well as the broader public, and trying to kind of understand some of the issues surrounding freight. Really looking to align this study with ongoing efforts. There's a comprehensive economic development strategy underway. We are aligning some of our data analysis with the Chamber of Commerce in their work. Looking to collaborate with some of the major initiatives that are underway, such as the Fountain Dual Service Rail Park. So really looking that this study can help advance the efforts of many of our partners across the region. It's also, as kind of Jason noted, not a full plan. This is really just trying to get some preliminary baseline data available. Many of it has never been collected and never been integrated into regional transportation or local transportation planning before. So this study will really provide that kind of baseline initial data that we can begin to expand on and better integrate freight planning throughout all of our efforts. And then finally, there are many opportunities coming up for federal funding or state funding, and this study will actually result in identifying priority corridors, potential logistics-oriented hubs in the future, key locations in need of improvement, and potential project areas overall. These will be kind of high-level recommendations, but again, it can be used to advance projects for consideration for future funding or future grant efforts. In terms of our approach, we're really kind of outlined a comprehensive effort here, really kind of looking at what data we can compile overall. Transportation planners really do rely on good data coming in to make our decisions. Unfortunately, on the freight side, we don't always have a lot of data, or we may not have as much data as we want in certain areas. But we're looking at kind of collecting, what's moving, where and how freight contributes and impacts employment and the economy, where some of our kind of operational and safety and capacity issues, and then really how does Pikes Peak compare across the country or to similar sized communities that are really positioning for logistics and trade, or really positioning for future goods movement. We're combining that data and those insights with information from our partners and stakeholders, so we can kind of supplement maybe what the data is not telling us, or maybe it's missing, and really kind of understand our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Lots of different ways to do that. We've had a lot of great conversations with folks across the region who are really excited and really engaged to be talking about freight overall. The study will kind of flow through 4 different phases, really kind of understanding, what our existing system looks like, what it's carrying, what are some of our issues, looking forward to what we expect to see in the long term, looking out 20 and 30 years. Doing a little bit of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, so we can kind of begin to understand our competitive position, where we might want to advance things overall. And then really that final phase is making those recommendations clear on potential future improvement areas, projects, corridors, those overall priorities for the region that can be advanced. So that's our general approach. As I mentioned, and I definitely want to reiterate that we are engaging many folks across the region, really working closely with the economic development community, primarily the Chamber of Commerce, the economic development staff at PPACG, and many other interested parties across the region. Had some great conversations with Fort Carson, looking forward to participating in future planning efforts there, so we can really kind of think about military freight movements and what that means overall. Including emergency response and emergency managers. So we're kind of thinking of hazardous materials, their transport by truck or rail, which has certainly been in the news a lot recently, and kind of helping those emergency managers understand what's moving throughout the region. Working directly with businesses, we're looking forward to a robust engagement later this summer to really kind of understand directly from shippers and carriers and manufacturers what are some of their challenges and issues and needs in the region. And then, of course, trying to engage the broader community and the public who oftentimes see very visible impacts from freight, just in terms of noise, congestion, and air pollution overall. So that's the quick overview of kind of what we're doing and how we're approaching this overall study. I think we'd like to share with you now some of the initial findings that we've seen that we're drawing from available data that's coming at the state level or available data nationally. First, just kind of trying to highlight all the different issues that we're looking at. This freight study will examine trucking, rail, and air cargo. So we're trying to kind of collect a sample of each of these modes overall. We're going to be looking at economic trends, employment trends, how freight contributes and supports the economy. We'll be looking at kind of future technology issues and how things are changing in terms of how we're moving goods. It doesn't have to be drones and automated trucks, but there's a lot of technology and innovation happening in the private sector that has an impact for what we're planning for overall. I mentioned military, but it's worth repeating, really kind of engaging some of our major military installations who do move considerable amount of goods and also move oversized and overweight and do need efficient, safe, and quick access to those routes. We'll also be looking at kind of a broad set of operational issues in terms of safety, where some of our truck crashes, rail crossing incidents, looking at hazardous materials, of which there's quite a few moving across the region, primarily petroleum, but including nuclear materials sometimes. Truck parking, we may have all seen and experienced with new federal regulations. Truck drivers are under pressure to find rest areas and safe truck parking to take mandated rest breaks. Looking at kind of things of operational issues, what happens when we've got major weather events or closures that impact some of our major roadways. Where do all those trucks or where do those trains go when something like that happens? Low clearance bridges and high clearance rail crossings are also an issue for truck movements. It can result in significant delays or longer routes as they look to travel and avoid those restrictions overall. And then air quality and noise, certainly noise within our communities from rail crossings, from excess emissions by trucks are certainly an issue that we can begin to kind of pinpoint and calculate overall. So we're kind of looking at the future forecast of the region and looking at pretty significant growth from really kind of a baseline in the total amount of tonnage that moves in, out, and within El Paso, Teller, and Park counties. Growing from about 19 million tons to 26 million tons by 2040. Similarly, a significant increase in the value of those goods, so that we're looking at a total economic impact of about $25 billion worth of goods moving throughout our communities by 2040. That really does mean that we'll be seeing more trucks in more places at more times as demand for those goods continues to increase. So where does the region kind of fit overall in terms of the state? It's maybe not growing as quickly in terms of tonnage and value of future goods movement as the Denver metro area or even the Grand Junction area, but certainly growing faster than the state as an average, and certainly faster than some of the other metropolitan regions across the state. So really kind of seeing that significant growth and potential impact out to the future. This is consistent nationally, but trucks really do carry 90% or more of all goods. And in fact, really at some point in a trip of a package or a parcel of product from an international, from a distributor to a warehouse, to a shopping center, to your home, it will be carried by a truck at some point in that journey overall. So really recognizing the importance of our roadway system and some of those truck operational issues to keep a safe and reliable system. Freight industries really are a significant portion of the overall economy. We kind of think about freight dependent industries. These are the industries that really do rely on kind of moving things from place to place on a daily basis. That could be manufacturing, construction, waste management, retail, warehousing. Those industries overall make up about a third, 20% to a third of the overall economy overall. When we look at really kind of freight dependent industries, we're looking at logistics and trade and actual goods movement, and then overall kind of trade. And there's about 1 in 5 workers overall in the region are employed there, about 20,000 total. You can see here on the screen, we're kind of showing the occupations that are most typical within the broader freight industry. Lots of truck drivers, lots of warehousing and distribution clerks overall. The majority of these jobs do pay less than regional averages in terms of wages and salaries, but many occupations do pay higher overall. When we look to the future and we look at what industries and what occupations are projected to grow in the next 10 years, we're really looking at kind of those retail consumer industries that are freight dependent, really driving demand for future growth. Again, every visitor, every resident, every business really does demand packages and products on a daily basis. And so those consumer and retail oriented industries will be driving future growth. That might be compared to a region that's being growth might be driven by manufacturing or natural resources or some of our extractive industries that tend to move higher tonnage but lower value goods. International exports are also a significant driver of goods and can be a significant economic impact to our communities. They tend to be more stable through recessions, support more indirect employment overall. So when we look back over the last 20 years or so, there's been a significant decline in the value of international exports produced in the region, specifically for export overseas. The Pikes Peak and particularly El Paso County still ranks about halfway through all U.S. metropolitan areas in terms of that overall international export sector. It's still a very significant number, about $866 million are produced in the region for export overseas. Primarily, that's going to be computers and electronics, and primarily it's going to trading partners in the Asia and Economic Pacific Council. That's really kind of moving probably through ports in California, to a lesser extent, ports in Texas. And so maintaining some of those connections to those international destinations are really important to keep export-oriented manufacturing in the region. As I mentioned, we're also kind of just starting to look at more data on some of those operational issues, kind of looking at some of the crash trends and safety data that's occurring in the region, and really seeing if we can kind of pull out where heavy or commercial vehicle trucks are overrepresented among all traffic accidents. This can help us identify kind of some of those hotspots, which might lead to future projects or improvements. Many times there's going to be at grades or where there's merge areas. It's not necessarily saying whether there's a truck or not at fault, but there's oftentimes some specific areas that maybe could be redesigned or re-engineered, or we could look at safety improvements or education for truck drivers to avoid these areas in the future. Similarly, we're starting to just look at rail incident data. So kind of looking at where there are conflicts between rail and motor vehicles. Those tend to happen at our high traffic crossings, of which there's many across the region. Sometimes they go through residential or commercial areas. We're also going to be looking more closely at hazardous materials incidents, trespassing, and other on-yard rail safety incidents to see if there's other areas or potential improvements that may be made overall. So that was kind of our initial take on some of the data. We're still kind of briefing some of the technical committees. We're continuing to engage our stakeholders, sharing information on what we've learned. We've got some other data to mine so that we can really begin to kind of peel back some of the data and understand some of those operational issues, environmental, community-oriented issues overall. We're looking forward to the remainder of the summer, really being able to more specifically engage our partners, again, military, economic development, emergency response, as well as reaching directly out to businesses to understand their issues and needs when it comes to, again, safe, reliable, efficient access to moving goods. And then we'll begin that SWOT analysis and that more distinct future projects, priorities, potential logistics-oriented development areas overall. That'll really take us through the fall. We'll continue to update this group and other technical committees on a regular basis so that we'll be sharing the results in terms of more data, but also what we've heard from our partners overall. So I'm going to take a breath and see if there's any questions, and welcome any comment here.
It's through traffic and also internal traffic.
Any questions, Phil? Sorry, your hand just waving.
Hi, this is Chris Crockett from Kono, and I really appreciate this study. It sounds like you've already put a lot of work into planning out what your work will be, and I appreciate that. And you may be presenting this to people who already know what freight is, but as just a citizen, what is freight for the purposes of your study? Is it a kind of goods? Is it tonnage? Is it a certain distance? It has to go a certain distance. Is it trucks full of wastewater? What does freight mean for the purposes of your study?
Thank you, Chris, and apologize. We could have backed up a little bit, and I did assume a level of knowledge. Freight is all of the above in those examples. It's really every good that travels, from a manufacturer or a distribution center to our grocery stores, to our Walmarts, and eventually even direct to your door, whether it's by e-commerce. So truly everything that you purchase or consume or that a business requires as an input is kind of a freight for our purposes. That will include waste of all forms.
Well, Clark, El Paso County, I'm sorry. A question with regards to freight, will you be capturing a lot of the local communities, vehicles, work trucks that have trailers and things like that as well, or is this mostly the large commercial vehicles?
Great question, and I'll answer that and kind of lead into another a weakness potentially in what we're looking at freight data. So most of our data, when we consider freight, we're really thinking those heavy commercial trucks. So those are going to be your tractors and your trailers. And that's kind of just a limitation on how we count vehicles, how do we track things, how commercial carriers are kind of defined under national law and then required to kind of report what goods are moving. So those work trucks, utilities, contractors. None of those will really be kind of counted in terms of local movements. And that leads me into a follow-on, which also means that we're not able to count any of those delivery vehicles. So those Amazon, light vans that you see more and more frequently aren't really included as a heavy-duty commercial truck. So we recognize that that's significant and growing, and that will not be reflected in our data. We'll be kind of looking and see if we can understand delivery issues through other information.
That helps. Anyone else?
I just want to make a historical note that it's due to the a specific fulfillment center, i.e. Amazon, that we now finally got public transportation to the airport that many of us have been lobbying for decades. And it was, I don't know if you all are aware that Amazon was not going to come here unless we had public transportation to the airport for their employees. So that was significant. I'm wondering about what state and national safety requirements there are for what the freights are carrying, thinking of course to the recent incident with the train, which apparently only had one staff member on the train and was carrying really hazardous material. How are we protected in terms of any kind of federal or safety requirements for the contents of these freight vehicles?
Great question. And I do recognize there's a lot of visibility on some of those, particularly rail cargo and hazardous materials. I think this study will really be able to help emergency responders and emergency managers in the region understand what materials are moving through the region on a regular basis. We heard directly from Colorado Springs Fire Department that would be helpful information so that they can do their own risk assessments and their own training. So if it's primarily again petroleum and not nuclear materials on the opposite ends of the spectrum, they can begin to do their risk assessment. That's probably the level of detail we'll be able to provide on hazardous materials. We can certainly document a lot of the ongoing discussions at the national level about new requirements for staff members on railroads, the staffing of those, safety features like positive train control that are kind of intended to prevent some of those accidents. There's a lot of discussion at the national level about how boxcars and tanker cars are constructed. And then there are specific regulations for when hazardous materials are moving through residential areas in communities, which would certainly be the case for the main line through Colorado Springs and all throughout El Paso County. So we'll be able to document some of those issues, and maybe that'll help understand how you might be protected or where some of the gaps are.
Thanks.
Anyone else?
I've got a question.
Ann?
This is Ann in Green Mountain Falls. Highway 24 through the Rocky Mountains is a major way to get over the mountains. And did I hear you say you're working with the Colorado Department of Transportation? The roads are in bad shape and they're very narrow, and it's an increasing safety problem as well as moving the goods. And then with the other concerns about safe evacuation of citizens if there's a bottleneck of vehicles. I don't know how much you can do, but I think this is a wonderful beginning, to get this mapped out. So thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Yeah, certainly some of those state routes are very important access for our communities. And it's freight plays a role in emergency response. Every time we've got a wildfire or a major flood or a rock slide, contractors or CDOT will be required in our Excel Energy to move heavy vehicles along our routes. So it's there's always a freight angle. Freight is everything, and it's really should be integrated into all the transportation planning that we do. So we'll certainly be able to look at kind of risk and resiliency issues, and maybe point PPACG to, hey, here's some operational or some safety issues on 24 that ought to be addressed through grant funding or through CDOT directly. So really strengthening on our understanding of goods and potential issues.
I think Ann's done. Anyone else? Well, thank you for an excellent presentation. That's very informative.
And we'll be back to share more information.
Great, appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Well, Danelle, you get the next two.
I do. So the first one is we just wanted to give a couple of updates about some safety related transportation efforts going on here at PPACG. So we are wrapping up the Community Traffic Safety Education Report. We did bring that to CAC as an informational item a few months ago. Basically what we've done is worked with a consultant to reach out to nonprofits, volunteers, other organizations that are doing traffic safety education efforts, whether that's giving out bicycle helmets or public service information, or actually the law enforcement agencies or the jurisdictions themselves, and kind of put together some information about what they're doing, what's not being done, what gaps are existing in our area, those kinds of things. So that will be finalized and brought back through the committee process here shortly. In part because of that effort, one of the big gaps noted in that effort was just a lack of comprehensive coordination in the region. And so PPACG, working with DriveSmart, which is a standalone nonprofit, but also under the PPACG umbrella, we've kind of partnered with DriveSmart Colorado to put in a grant to the Colorado Office of Transportation Safety Highway Safety Office, which is a mouthful. We've been notified that we've been selected for a grant that would allow us to hire a safety champion for the region to work in our staff and hopefully help identify some areas where we can take some actions, coordinate efforts. The intent is really to assist with helping all of these organizations collaborate and be more effective. But also we really intend for, hopefully this position would find ways to be self-sustaining, and then would transfer into DriveSmart Colorado and kind of help with some of those efforts going forward. We also have been approved to hire a VISTA volunteer through the AmeriCorps program, and they will also, that person is a one-year slot, and they will also be helping with traffic safety coordination and outreach, depending on the skill sets and the efforts that we kind of identify going through the next year or so. Our DriveSmart board president, John Henry, will actually be coming to present to the CAC in August. He wasn't available this month or next month, but he'll come and chat with us in August. And then two other quick things. We just started a consultant effort to look at, if you remember, Jason O'Brien came and talked to us a little bit about some of the trends in safety issues in the area, crashes going up, that kind of thing. So what we've done is kind of put together a scope of work to look at what kind of trends and what kind of causes are we seeing for crashes, specifically since 2020 and since the beginning of the pandemic. And the part of the reason for that is that we want to make sure that efforts that we undertake going forward, any countermeasures we put out there, are actually addressing current issues, and we're not accidentally, using things that would have been effective 5 years ago that maybe this in the future won't be. So that's another thing we're doing. And we're also working with several jurisdictions in the area on an application for a grant for a safety action plan for the area. Still working on that one. It's still a bit muddy. It's due in July, so hopefully we get good news on that. But just wanted to update you on some things that are going on behind the scenes here. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to address those. We're busy, which is good. Things need to be done.
I've heard several times that the department that keeps changing name, the Department of Innovation, Sustainability, Smart Cities, that was one of their goals, was to kind of gather all of the data together. And I know I've been involved over the decades with trying to collect data about crashes in neighborhoods. And it was very frustrating because there'd be a set from the fire department, there'd be another set from the emergency responders and the police and whatnot. And we wanted to, and so I thought that was one of the things, the innovation or whatever it's going to finally be called, is are you working with them? Because that's was something they said they were going to work on.
It is a known issue, and we actually just talked with someone from the state, from PPACG about this the other day. A lot of states don't have the lull in reporting that Colorado does. So a lot of the data that comes to us at PPACG is a couple of years old by the time we get it, because it goes up through from the law enforcement, from all the jurisdictions up through the state and back down to us, and they have to sanitize it and all of this kind of thing. So we are very well aware of that challenge, and we have spoken with some folks about potential opportunities to get better, newer data. So that is something that we're working on, but it is a challenge.
That was good.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
And finally, the last item of the day, the CAC nominations subcommittee did meet since our last CAC meeting. We finalized the at-large application and talked about the process. That application has been released. So, and I believe I've sent it to everybody in your email. If you have folks in your community or know of places where you can post that information, whether it be physically posting or posting online, please feel free to distribute that widely. We would be happy to get as many applications as we can for those at-large seats. And then what will happen is that after that window closes, and I believe that date is July 22nd, after that deadline, or actually probably shortly before that deadline, I'm going to talk with the nominating subcommittee to say, this is about how many applications we have at the moment. And depending on how many applications we get, we'll kind of determine our timetable with, does the subcommittee need to meet prior to the next CAC meeting, or likely if we get enough applications, we will move. So we won't actually discuss at the next CAC meeting, but the following one after that, if that makes sense, just because of the way that the deadlines fall. Also, it is my understanding that Colorado Springs is taking the CAC's nominations to the city council. So hopefully those seats will also be filled soon.
Good.
I contacted 2 council members personally, handwritten notes, and I talked to them. I said, you got 3 vacancies, get some representation, please. That is good.
So I think there's a website.
Yes, absolutely.
This is Miley from representing El Paso County. There is a link on the website that we can direct people there too.
Yes. And if you need paper copies, let me know. I'd be happy to print those and give them to you as well.
Okay, thank you. Well, moving on here, member announcements. Do any of you have any comments, announcements? I have one. El Paso County Fair is coming up the 15th of July. I'd love to have you out there. And oh, thank you, Jared's got the schedule up. We'd love to have you attend that this year. And meeting schedules posted, hearing no other comments or.
Well, I'll make a quick comment. I want to thank the staff here working overtime tonight dealing with us
Yeah.
bunch of amateurs. I really appreciate it.
Okay, hearing that, we're adjourned.